And, hopefully the former Missouri Valley Player of the Year will really help him out at corner. But there is one team that you haven't heard all morning and may only hear once, and that's the folks up in the Pacific Northwest are saying, what is happening with our Seahawks? And what is happening with Seattle going into their 10th anniversary season?
Of course, they got up at 5 o'clock this morning, too, like the rest of us, and they've been just sort of biding their time. They were trying to talk about some deals. Keith Simpson was mentioned as a possibility. Nothing happened. Of course, their own first-round pick went to Cincinnati in a trade a couple of years ago for Blair Bush. They do have a pick coming up later in this round. The interesting scenario, it'll be interesting to see what happens, is in the third round, Seattle is supposed to give their third-round pick to New England in a trade last summer for Bob Kreider. But New England also has the option of taking Seattle's second-round pick in 1986, and they must exercise that option no later than 5 picks before that third-rounder. Well, what you throw into it now is New England has made the trade with San Francisco. They've acquired an extra second-round pick in that exchange, and now the Patriots have 3 picks in this second round. So with those extra selections, they just might opt to take Seattle second next year, and the Seahawks might come up with an extra pick out of it.
Your impression so far of the Western draft as far as some of the teams here, especially you look at the Chargers, who seem to have really helped themselves.
The Chargers have helped themselves. You mentioned Davis. They got the help in the offensive line. Denver I like also. The Broncos got versatile Steve Sewell in the first round, the running back from Oklahoma, and then made that trade up a few spots in the second round. I'm sure they were probably worried that either Indianapolis or even Cleveland might grab Vance Johnson, the wide receiver from Arizona. The Broncos, they want to get that speed at receiver, enable John Elway to really take advantage of his abilities. They made the trade, they got Vance Johnson, and that should help their offense.
Of course, everybody knows that Vance has got talent. Now it's just to see if he's got that desire. And of course, with John Elway throwing to him, it'll be very, very interesting in the Mile High City. Now let's go back to Bobby Lee in Bristol.
Thank you, Greg. As you mentioned, the Seahawks will be the last team to select a player in this draft. They'll be picking in the number 25 hole. It's in the second round. It'll be the number 53 selection overall. A few selections back, though. Houston has been a defensive day. They continued in that vote by selecting Richard Byrd, defensive end and defensive tackle out of Southern Miss. Chris?
All right, and Richard Byrd is on the phone with us now from down in Mississippi. Congratulations. You're going with the Oilers, a team that said they needed defensive help. They feel you can give them defensive help. Your thoughts on being selected by Houston today?
It's great. I don't know how to explain it. It's the best thing that ever happened in my life. I got my family around here, and I got the call. I tried to get everybody to be quiet, and I couldn't. It's great, though. I like to drop the phone.
Well, that's right. You're not very far from Houston. It's not a very long drive. The one thing you do have is that Ray Childress was picked ahead of you, and he plays the same position. But I guess you can play either defensive tackle or defensive end. Is that right?
Yes, I played a lot of inside tackle on the 4-3 in the Senior Bowl, and kind of got used to it, and you really enjoy playing that position. So I guess that's, in my favor right there, is I can play both positions.
Well, here's, you take a quick look at the Oilers, who they have on the defensive line. They said even last year that they definitely needed help. They did not get to the passer. And at defensive tackle, Childress really being put at defensive end. Richard, you get plugged in there favorably. Did you have a feeling, was Houston scouting you a little bit more down the stretch here? Did you have a thought that the Oilers might look your way?
No, sir, I didn't. I talked to them about a couple weeks ago, I guess, and, they really never said anything, and, like I said, I just got the telephone call, and it was great, and it's going to work out perfect.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have a great rest of the day. Enjoy yourself, and congratulations.
Oh, thank y'all very much.
All right, Richard Byrd, who was a second-round pick of the Houston Oilers, going on the defensive line.
Okay, and Buffalo, now with 3 minutes exactly remaining until their second-round pick. They've already signed Bruce Smith and drafted defensive back Derek Burrows, and early in the second round have gone for Mark Trainowitz, the offensive lineman, also a guard and a center from Nebraska. So that selection about to be forthcoming in New York City. We'll step aside for a moment and then get you back to New York and see where we stand. That selection will get us to within 1 pick of the halfway mark of the second round of this 1985 draft as Buffalo reaches a decision.
Buffalo Bills waiting on under a minute and 20 seconds now from the word from Buffalo as to who they will pick here in the second round. The Bills have already had 3 selections. Bruce Smith of Virginia Tech, the #1 pick. Derek Burrows, the defensive back, also out of Memphis State, also a selectee in the first round. Mark Trainowitz, the offensive lineman out of Nebraska, was selected here in the second round. Now they have another pick here in the second round You're not going out on a limb to this point in time to say that Buffalo probably has helped itself the most on this day, at least, in regard to athletes taken, because they've had more than anybody else. But how about the quality of those athletes? Yeah?
It looks very pretty. I mean, they have on the board the best defensive end, either the best or the second best defensive back, a center projected to tackle who's really one of the best. On paper, it looks great. But what people might remember 10 years from or 20 years from now is that they let a Hall of Fame quarterback go. If Bernie Kosar turns out to be an all-timer, they could have had him. People will remember that in that supplemental draft. They would have had him for nothing. So that's what they might go down in history for.
Remember also that these athletes have to be signed. Smith is already signed, but Burroughs and Trainowitz have not been signed as yet. We're down to 10 minutes, Paul.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
We got 7 seconds. I like the draft so far. It's been excellent for Buffalo. These are the people that they wanted, that they said that they were going to go into the draft.
Not difficult to read lips. Kevin says pass. And up next, Kansas City at the 15 mark and kind of go ahead, continue with the Bills.
Well, with the Bills, I just want to go back to a thing. When you look at this draft, and they're talking about people that aren't picked up because of injuries they had last year, you must remember one thing. I don't really think they come into play from a college standpoint where they go into the pros, for the simple reason that when they go to these camps that everybody has, and they check these players out, the teams take their trainers with them, they take their doctors with them, they put them through tremendous physicals and also agility tests and everything that they have to go through. And when they're all done, George, they know exactly how rehabilitated the guy is and how far along this guy is with his injury. Is he well enough to play? Can he play an entire season or more in the pros? So I don't. It's a small part of it, but it's not the major part that people make it out to be.
All right, we're waiting on Kansas City. The card has been shifted. Let's go to Joe Ryan.
The clock is now running for Cincinnati.
Kansas City has selected Jonathan Hayes, tight end, Iowa. Jonathan Hayes, tight end, Iowa, selected by Kansas City. Buffalo now has also selected, so the clock is running for Cincinnati. Buffalo's choice, Chris Burkett, wide receiver, Jackson State. Chris Burkett, wide receiver, Jackson State. Cincinnati is up.
All right, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th wide receiver of the draft so far, Chris Burkett, taken by the Buffalo Bills, and we talked about the fact that may be a direction they were going in. Both you and Mel mentioned that as a possibility.
Strictly a need pick. It makes sense. Now all they need is somebody to throw it to.
You know, in Buffalo, this is exactly what they said that they were going to do. They didn't deviate at all from it. They took a defensive lineman, a defensive back, which is their need, an offensive lineman, and now a wide receiver. They are probably the only honest team that we've seen out of the 28 that have taken exactly what they said they were going to take.
Well, they didn't lie about Bruce Smith.
No, they didn't lie about Bruce Smith, and that one you were right on.
I had that one.
Yeah,
and also, we've got Jonathan Hayes, the first tight end taken in this National Football League draft so far. This, the 14th person drafted in the second round. It was, again, similar to last year where no tight ends were taken in the first round, and we ended up with 3 in the second round. We'll be back with more of our continuous draft coverage in a moment.
The 15th pick in the second round, back in the Sports Center with Chris Berman and Mel Kiper Jr. I'm Bob Lee. We probably are past the point now in the draft where if you make an error in player selection as a general manager, as a head coach, or as a head scout or whatever, it really won't come back to haunt you. But if you make a boo-boo early on, as Steve Sable tells us, it can be remembered and enshrined in history. A look back in 1956. Being in Madison, Wisconsin tonight because 3 of the top 20 selections made in the first round were from the University of Wisconsin. And part of that party, I guess, Greg White, can spill over now to San Francisco, where you're standing by with one of the selectees. Greg?
You got to believe it. It's Fisherman's Wharf time for this guy, Richard Johnson. And I'll tell you, you've got a lot of folks back home who are awfully proud of all 3 of you. But you're the guy, the 11th pick overall in this draft, and you just love to block kicks, don't you?
Yes, that's what I figured that I had to do when I was a freshman, to get on a traveling team. And I kept doing it for 4 years, and it turned out to be great for me.
I guess the Oilers, obviously a very defensive draft. They've had 3 picks so far, 2 defensive linemen sandwiched around yourself there, stepping into that secondary. They feel their offense is doing pretty well, or at least will grow behind Warren Moon, but they need the help on defense. And what kind of impact, what kind of adjustment do you think it'll be going from the colleges into that pro training camp for the first time?
I think the major impact will be adjusting towards the mental phase of the game. I think adjusting to a longer schedule will also be very important for me.
You were all Big Ten this year, and I guess it was a year ago when you suffered a shoulder separation, but everything's okay now as you go into the pros.
Yes, it is. I dislocated in the 4th game of my junior year, and I missed 4 games and came back later to play with the brace. But this year I was fortunate enough to play without the brace, without any significant injuries.
You guys are in the Hall of Fame Bowl. Obviously, played pretty tough teams in the Big Ten, but it's going to be a little bit different in that National Football League.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot different because of the level of competition. I don't think you'll be able to lay back any one week. I think there'll be a great dish of receivers coming at you every week.
You look at the teams in your division, you got Pittsburgh, Lewis Lips, of course, John Stallworth, and now Cincinnati, you got Chris Collinsworth. They've added Eddie Brown to that. So I guess you'll be getting a lot of testes right there in the division.
Yeah, I think I'll learn a lot on the field as well as off the field, and I'm looking forward to it.
You think about a team like Houston. Obviously, I'm sure you didn't care where you went, but it's a young team that really does have a lot of potential.
Yes, I believe it does have a lot of potential as a football team on the move, but I also like Houston in the fact that not only is it a good city to play football in, I think it'd be a great city to move down and reside in my later years.
Well, one of the 3 very happy first-round draft pick Badgers for 1985. Now let's go back to Bristol and Bob Lee.
Thank you, Greg. And Mel Kiper, his crystal ball is smoking, sputtering, and sparking. Cincinnati did take Carl Zander, as Mel predicted, the inside linebacker out of Tennessee. And moments before that, Jonathan Hayes was the pick of Kansas City, the tight end out of Iowa. And Chris, you're standing by.
All right, we have with us on the phone right now Jonathan Hayes, a top tight end pick. He's on the phone live with us in Iowa City. First tight end to go. Got to make you feel pretty good today.
It does. I'm real excited about it. I'm happy for the opportunity to go to Kansas City.
Well, the Chiefs going in, they said that they would be looking for a tight end. Did you have an inkling that they'd be looking your way?
No, not really. I really wasn't sure who was looking my way, but I'm just happy to be a part of it now.
Well, you did not catch very many passes last season, but you had a guy that threw a lot of balls, and Chuck Long, and should be ready to... I mean, you should be ready for a wide-open offense that Kansas City might want to use. They throw the ball an awful lot. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be, it'll be a challenge.
It's not very far from where you are now, too. Do you like feeling at least close to home a little bit?
Well, I went to school here for 4 years. Yeah. I'm from Pittsburgh, but I'm used to the Midwest now, and I enjoy the people out here and the lifestyle, so I hope it won't be too big of a change for me.
Well, congratulations on the first tight end being picked, the 2nd round by the Kansas City Chiefs. Good luck in the NFL.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Jonathan Hayes, the choice of the Chiefs, who have gone now Horton at running back and Hayes at tight end. So the Chiefs, even though they had the wide-open offense, they feel that that's where they need the most help. They need a little more offense in a very offensive division, I guess.
And after Hayes was selected by Kansas City, Cincinnati came back and took Carl Zander, the inside linebacker from Tennessee. Reviewing what the Bengals have done so far today, they took Eddie Brown, the wide receiver at Miami, surprised, I'm sure, to realize that he was still available. Then coming back later in that first round and selecting defensive end Emmanuel King out of Alabama, and then Carl Zander, the inside linebacker out of Tennessee. Peter Brown, the player personnel director of the Bengals. Yes, the draft is one tool, but there are others available to you.
I look at the draft as a form of artistic currency, and you can put that currency into a good veteran player that's with another team, or you can put it directly into draft selections. I think the important thing is never eliminate a source of talent, and I think basically the majority of football teams, and there's certain exceptions, tend to go with the draft, but if there's a good football player out there, no matter what his status is in another structure, if you have access to him and you can acquire his rights and help your football team, it's a good move to try and acquire him.
One way or another, free agency, the waiver wire trades. We've had one trade today involving a veteran player, Joe Washington, traded from the Redskins to the Atlanta Falcons. Dallas and St. Louis and Giants, those are the picks we will update you on as we're past the halfway point of the second round of the draft, and we'll be back in just a moment for the 6th consecutive year, our live coverage of the National Football League draft here on ESPN.
Back at draft headquarters at the Omni Park Central Hotel in New York City. We're now under 10 minutes for the St. Louis Cardinals in their selection. It would be the 17th selection in the second round. There is word drifting around that possibly Atlanta and the St. Louis Cardinals may be working on some kind of a deal here. That still is undecided as the clock continues to wind down under the 10-minute mark. But as we look ahead, coming up next, you got St. Louis, then you have the Giants, and we'll be going up to Sam Rosen to get some reaction from Giant fans that are here. But then you've got 3 New England Patriot selections for the remainder of this second round. Those could be valuable picks, Jim.
Yeah, they could. Well, they got their offensive lineman that they wanted. They could go another offensive lineman. You know, they like to run the ball. They have a lot of backs. They have a pretty good offense. New England is a team that has good players at almost every position. They've always had great talent. Dick Steinberg's a good personnel guy. They just don't do it once they're there. And they have an easygoing coach, Ray Berry. A lot of people are pessimistic that, you know, the same situation will continue. They can afford, this is a team that can afford to pick that best athlete, the best guy on the board. They don't really have that many pressing needs. They could use a defensive back. Here and there, they do a little patchwork, but, you know, they have great linebackers. They could use a lineman, a defensive lineman, but they really have players.
You may see your first field goal kicker.
You like Kevin Butler?
Yeah, I do. I saw quite a bit of Kevin Butler, and I just it's you know, it's hard to say to get a kicker in the second round. I understand it, but when they have 3 picks like that in the second round, and again, Paul is absolutely right. They have excellent talent at New England, and they're solid in almost every position. And this may be a chance for them to grab a kicker.
We'll talk more about that. Very odd if a kicker does go this high in the draft, not since Gogolak. Let's go to Joe Ryan at the desk.
We have a trade involving this selection. Trade between Atlanta and St. Louis. The teams are exchanging their choices on this round. The St. Louis choice, this choice number 17. The Atlanta choice number 23 that they had acquired from Washington. In addition, Atlanta is giving St. Louis its 5th round draft choice in this draft. Atlanta now is on the clock.
Okay, there you have it. Basically what they did was swap selections here in this draft. The second round of the 1985 draft, Atlanta would have been picking 23rd. Now St. Louis will pick 23rd, and Atlanta will pick in the number 17 position. And then from there, it will be the 5th round in 85. This draft also Atlanta will give to St. Louis. So again, we're waiting on the pick. Was St. Louis, now it is Atlanta. The pick just prior to this, the Dallas Cowboys took Jesse Penn, a 6'2" linebacker, 220 pounds, out of Virginia Tech, a teammate, of course, of Bruce Smith, the #1 draft pick of the Buffalo Bills, the top pick of this particular draft. You can take a look at Jesse Penn. He is a spark plug kind of ball player like Carl Zander before him. He is a mover, a hitter, an agile athlete, averaging close to 6 tackles per game. Outside linebacker, Virginia Tech, Jesse Penn, and our grading out of his abilities, indicating he was one of the top 5 linebackers in his category. Were you surprised that Dallas did take him?
Jesse Penn is one of those very active guys. If you saw him in a Virginia Tech's games, he really stood out too, along with Bruce Smith. I mean, very active, moves a lot. Dallas, as you know, lost the services of Billy Joe of Cannon, who was their #1 draft a couple of years ago, and they need that active outside linebacker. I mean, they want the real action guy out there.
So often that happens, Paul, when someone goes to scout an athlete. You know, it happened with Dwight Clark of San Francisco, and Bill Walsh picked him up. He didn't go there to look at Dwight Clark, but they saw another athlete. And in many cases, like a Jesse Penn, he's a bona fide athlete, a fine athlete by himself, but by playing with Bruce Smith, you're going to get seen a lot more often than if you played in Timbuktu.
George, that is so true. And you know, when they, especially when you're looking at a player that's on the same, like, defense, as you're talking about. Now, here's a guy, and everybody's going to look at Bruce Smith, and they know he's the number one, but this was before, you know, when they're looking at him. And all of a sudden, this guy pops up. You see this happen on so many teams, and especially, not the major teams, but in the lesser teams. When you get down to other divisions, even when you have an outstanding guy, and they'll look at a guy and it'll stay in the back of their mind maybe for 2 years, and they say, this kid, if he develops, he could be. We'll put him back at a checkpoint over here, and we'll look at him in a year from now. And this may have been something that happened with Jesse Penn.
We are waiting on the Atlanta selections in.
Well, you know, this is so typical of Dallas. Last year, their defense was coming on. They had a good defense at the end of the year. Their offense had real problems. Offensive line, no problem here. Wide receivers, a real problem. Donnelly, they don't know whether he'll be back. They go away from the problem areas and they fortify something that's strong because their computer says so. It's so typical, and I wonder whether it's really the right answer.
All right, Sam Rosen is standing by. He's looking for some right answers in the next selection that'll be coming after this one. Atlanta is up. We're waiting on it. Then will come the Giants. Sam, what's happening with the fans here in New York City?
As you know, George, Giants fans are very serious about the draft picks, and they come to the NFL draft, even take off from school. Is that right?
Sort of.
Sort of?
Half a day.
What are you guys doing here today?
We come to see what our team's doing, you know. We want them to be a competitive team and see how good of draft choice they picked.
How'd you like the Giants' first-round pick?
That was all right. I thought they could have got George Rogers since he was up, but this guy's good. George Adams, he's strong, big. Feel sorry for Joe Morris. Might lose his job.
Now, what about this second-round draft pick? What do you think they should go for?
Defensive end.
Okay. You don't think you should be in school today instead of being at the draft?
Well, I'd rather be at the draft, but...
Not bad. I'd rather be at the draft, too. We'll be back with the Atlanta Falcons pick and then the Giants.
We're now under a minute and 10 seconds for the Atlanta pick. As you look on at the Atlanta desk, there's Whitey Zimmerman, the equipment man, who's been coming here about 10 years to keep up on the end of it from New York for the Atlanta Falcons. Here's the selection.
Atlanta has selected Mike Gann, defensive end, Notre Dame. Mike Gann, defensive end, Notre Dame.
So,
New York Giants are on the clock.
Finally has been selected, the defensive end from Notre Dame. And Zim, we were talking a little bit earlier, as you talk to people, personnel people around the league and scouts, what is the perception of the Notre Dame athlete?
Well, you know, this is something that scouts say because they like to gossip and exchange opinions and things like that. And you talk about a player and they say, well, you know, he's a domer, he's a golden domer. And it's almost like saying, well, you know, the guy's only got one arm or something. And you toss it off. But then when something like this happens, when you wait so long before a Notre Dame player is drafted, it comes back to you. And I think the feeling among a lot of them is that Notre Dame has sort of had a bit of a superior attitude. And they come into the pros not quite as hungry as other players. Now, remember, this is not my own opinion, but I hear it from scouts. And it really is a stigma almost against Notre Dame players. And you hear it from a lot of them.
Gann's a good one, Paul.
I think so. I think he's great.
He is. He's big, he's strong, and he's got a good attitude. We had a chance to interview him once this year, and I'll tell you something, he's ready to play.
Okay, we are waiting on the New York Giants selection, the 18th selection here in the second round of the draft. The first Notre Dame athlete has been selected. When we talk about Notre Dame, though, we can't tell you this, that 19 current Notre Dame ball players are active in the National Football League. That is number 11 on the current list. USC is number 1 with 44. Penn State is next with a total of 40 athletes active during the course of the 1984 season. We are waiting back in our ESPN Sports Center headquarters for a chat with one of the top athletes of this year's draft. That's Al Toon. Let's go back to Bob Lee.
Thank you, George. We've been saying it has been a very big day for the University of Wisconsin. A few moments ago, Greg Wyatt chatting with Richard Johnson, the defensive back, whom the Oilers selected in the first round today. But the number 10 selection overall was Al Toon. And as we wait for the Giants, I guess we have to talk to the Jets pick.
Yes, we certainly do. On the phone with us right now from Madison, Wisconsin, Al Toon. I guess one happy family, all you Wisconsin guys going in the first round. How do you feel out there? Must be a good group.
Yeah, I was really happy for our team. It's really exciting to see 3 people from the same team be in the first round.
Al, a lot of folks had thought that you and Eddie Brown and Jerry Rice would be long gone even before pick number 10. Were you sitting at home wondering what was going on, what was happening to the wide receivers, or you figured your time would come awfully soon anyway?
Well, the anticipation grew, but I knew sooner or later one of us was going to get picked. And being that it was my birthday, I was really glad that I was chosen to be the first receiver picked by the New York Jets.
Well, that's a great happy birthday to you from all of us here at ESPN. Now, I would say you're going to the Big Apple now. Now, how does that weigh in? That a little bonus for you?
Yeah, it's a great feeling. It's a great place. People are nice, and there are many opportunities. And I'm looking forward to being there.
Well, good luck with the Jets. They say they weren't happy with their production of wide receiver last year, and obviously they're very happy to have you aboard. Best of luck, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, so birthday boy, and then we got the Giants, and we've got the Giants coming up in Pittsburgh. You got to go on that, Mel?
I think the Giants will go for Tyrone Davis, cornerback from Clemson. I really believe that Pittsburgh will opt for Mark Benning, the fine offensive tackle from Nebraska, who needs some work on his pass blocking, as we talked about last night on the preview show.
That, of course, just off the top of your head.
Right. And from inside the pages of his uncannily accurate book, you've been on the mark of late. In what we thought might be a very predictable draft. We knew who the first-round players would be, but putting them on the correct teams, that has been the real effort this year. We're awaiting the Giants, the 18th pick in the second round, then Pittsburgh, then New England. New England with 3 picks to go in the balance of round 2. We'll get back to New York right after this word. Here, the pre-Kentucky Derby festivities from Churchill Downs in Louisville, beginning at 11 Eastern time. That'll be 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll talk to the jockeys, the trainers, the owners, and if we're struggling, we'll even talk to the horses and pretend it's like the NFL draft instead of floating into the horses. That'll be coming along this Saturday, beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern time. A day at the races, our 4th consecutive year here on ESPN. While we were away, the Giants selected Stacy Robinson, the wide receiver from North Dakota State, which was the 46th pick overall, the 18th in the second round. That puts Pittsburgh up now with the clock running and New England on deck. Stacy Robinson, well, if you're coming out of North Dakota State, you've got to do something right to impress the scouts. And at one of the combines, we put the question to him about exactly what he thought he had done well to earn this respect and come out now in the second round, the pick of the Giants.
I think the main thing that caught their eye was when they came in to tie me in my 40 time, which was 4.3. And then they started to look further and found out that I could do other things, such as catch the ball and block.
Funny how a 4.3 grabs your attention. A 4.39 out of North Dakota State, an outstanding track man, a state track champion in high school, had a very good senior bowl, and has really, I guess, Mel, shown improvement over the last 2 years. And that's an important, we're talking about over and underachievers, but when you can show professional scouts that you're not at a plateau, that's certainly in Stacy's good stead.
That's true, Bob. And you look at a guy like Stacy Robinson with great speed. He also has good hands, which is surprising for a guy with that kind of speed. We talked about it with Vance Johnson. Stacy Robinson showed it against top competition at the Senior Bowl. He'll catch the ball coming across that middle. He took a good shot in that game and held on to the ball. He has a vision problem in one eye, similar to what Wesley Walker has with the Jets, and that may have shied teams away in the late first and early second round. He's a good choice for the Giants. I thought maybe Tyrone Davis, the defensive back. They opted for the wide receiver. They need a big play wide receiver, and they had Bobby Johnson and Lionel Manuel, but they really had trouble late in the year getting open. So I think a guy like Robinson with his blazing speed may open up that secondary and give Sims another target.
And 2 offensive picks now for the Giants. They've gone for George Adams, the running back from Kentucky. That was the first-round selection. And now Stacy Robinson out of North Dakota State, the wide receiver. The Steelers are up. Their first-round pick was Darrell Sims, the defensive tackle from Wisconsin. And then the parade of Patriots will get underway. 3 picks in the balance of the second round, George. And it's going to get increasingly interesting to see what Dick Steinberg does here with these 3 picks.
That's right, Bob. We already have that Patriot selection in. It just came in. Darren Veras, the fine defensive end from Stanford, from the Cardinal, has been selected by the New England Patriots. That came just moments ago. Veras, of course, has played some linebacker, has played some defensive end, and also has played some tight end even before that when he was at Stanford when he first came to Stanford. So Veras selected by New England. Pittsburgh took Mark Benning, the tackle out of Nebraska, and just before that the Giants selected Stacy Robinson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. Now, you have to understand the way things operate here. Everybody is on the floor of draft headquarters, all the individual teams, and up in the balcony are fans. Now, most of them are content to see what happens with the naked eye, but some want to get a sneak preview of who's writing what on their cards, and that was one fan taking a look from way up on high at his particular team. That was just before the Giant draft when Stacy Robinson was selected. Robinson is the kind of young man that could really excite the folks in and around the Meadowlands. Yeah. He's an electric kind of ball player.
Great speed, great stats, not big-time competition. Good gamble. A lot of people were interested in him. Veras is a real good pick for the Patriots. You know, as you probably know, their pass rush came from the linebacker, from Tippett. They need a pass rush from up front. Sims has not been great. He's been another player. He's been all right. Veras is a good pick for him. I don't understand Pittsburgh pick of Benning at all. He's not Chuck Noll's type of lineman. He's a great big guy, 6'6", 290. Noll likes those little, shorter, trap-blocking types, and I don't know why they picked this guy. It's a mystery to me.
The Patriots, in terms of their selection so far, with Matic or Brigham Young, the center, and again here, 2 good players so far.
Yeah, they're going for meat and potatoes. Yep. Nothing flashy. They're going for solid linemen both ways. Veras, the only thing wrong with him, according to the scouts, is that he needs strength for it. He doesn't do much with weights. He had a great East-West game, great pass rushing ability, helped his status greatly, but he needs strength.
There he is, averaging just around 5 tackles per game. As I said, he started out as a tight end when he first went to college, and then played some linebacker and wound up a defensive end. He had a very good Senior Bowl this year, and that was certainly something that raised his stock. 6'4", 254.
I think the East-West game was his big game. He was unblockable that day.
Darren Veras, a defensive end from the Stanford Cardinal. His strongest grade outs come in strength and also in quickness. 6'4", 254 pounds. Sam Rosen is standing by with some New York Giant fans and a reaction to Stacy Robinson's selection. Sam.
Thank you, George. It seemed as if the Giants were ready to pick Mike Gann when the Atlanta Falcons made that choice. So scratch Gann, rip up the card, and write in the name Stacy Robinson. What's the reaction to Stacy Robinson up here?
Very mixed.
All right. Why?
Give him a chance. It's mixed. He doesn't have the size, really. He's 5'9½". He's got good speed, but will he come through? I don't know. Is he worth a second-rounder?
No. Giants have had problems with second-round picks in the past.
Yeah, such as Dave Young and, Leonard Marshall. But I personally think that Stacy Robinson might turn into a football player eventually because of his talent. I mean, he played in a veer at North Dakota State, and once he gets into a pro type of offense, he might just improve, and that's what I'm looking for.
Stacy Robinson's got great speed. You don't like him, though.
Oh, he's a water bug, all right, but we could have had Michael Moon, or we could have had this fellow Veras from Stanford that was just picked, or even Mike Kelly. You know, we need a center with Belcher out.
Okay, Giants are coming up with the second pick in the third round of the draft. We'll find out the reaction to that one in just a little while. Right now, big question mark for Stacy Robinson. Back to you, George.
Okay, we're waiting on. We can't tell you this. We've had a chance to see him a couple of times, and as a young man who played for the Bisons, they just don't play hockey out there. They do play some football, too, and he is an electrifying kind of runner. If he can stay healthy and get a chance, he could very well be one of the darlings of the Meadowlands crowd before this is all over. Take a look at another one of the second-round selections, Mark Benning, the tackle out of Nebraska. We have been talking all day about the quality of athlete and the size of the athlete coming out of Nebraska, and here is a clear indication. 6'6", 290 pounds, an exceptionally strong young man, and he was obviously all Big 8, but Zim, there are some who say that he never really reached his potential, the potential that people thought he had early on in his career.
Well, the scouts that I talked to were lukewarm on him. Maybe he's young. Big guys really develop more slowly than other type players, but I heard that he's very big, very strong, not quite as productive as he could have been. Usually a Chuck Noll type draft is smaller, overachiever type, a little more active.
He goes from one program that is a very heavy weight-oriented program to another one. That's the way Pittsburgh, of course, first built its strength.
Well, all offensive linemen are weight-oriented. You know, you can't play the offensive line without weights or steroids. That's what it's come to.
Okay, we are waiting on the selection by the Chicago Bears. Then come the Los Angeles Rams. ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1985 draft will continue from San Francisco, Connecticut, and New York after this.
Before you buy your next car or truck, hurry in during clearance time at Miller Ford Subaru on Route 38.
Certainly the Bears are good. It's the biggest surprise, the biggest noteworthy selection so far of this draft in the first round when they opted for the refrigerator, Mr. William Perry, the defensive tackle out of Clemson, who has been weighed in at anywhere from between 305 to 370 pounds. So whether the Bears have something else up their sleeve, we'll see momentarily. That'll be selection 49 overall, selection 21 in the draft, then the Rams. And then if you're scoring at home, St. Louis. Washington began with a 23 pick today in the second round, traded it to Atlanta, then it was traded to St. Louis. So it'll be Chicago, the Rams, and St. Louis. Let's backtrack a couple of picks to the Steelers selection. Mark Benning, the tackle out of Nebraska, 6'6½", nearly 300 pounds in his own, Chris.
Well, another one of those Nebraska linemen that goes so very, very high. We have Mark Benning on the phone with us right now. Congratulations on your choice by the Steelers. Did you talk to Chuck Noll yet? If so, what did he have to say to you?
Yeah, I talked to him just a few minutes ago, and you know he was happy and he seemed pleased to get a hold of me, and I'm just really delighted to be with the Steelers, and you know I won't let him down.
What, Mark? What do you say to comments like the Steelers usually go for more drive, a trap blocking, and you are more the bigger 280, 290-pound tackle? Noll didn't seem to be too worried about that, I guess, when he talked with you.
Yeah, well, Coach, the offensive line coach came into town last week and worked me out, and you know we worked through some of the pass protection type of deals that they use, the technique and all, and he seemed, you know, satisfied that he could work with me, and I had some skills that you know could be developed, and maybe I was a little bit ahead of what they thought. I don't know. They took the time to come in and take a look, and I'm just really pleased that they did.
Well, you go from one winning football club, Nebraska, so very, very good over the years, to another one that, of course, is a fine organization, the Steelers, one step away from the Super Bowl. That seems you'd be used to the fact that you're playing for a winning team.
Yeah, well, playing at Nebraska, you know, you can get a little spoiled with winning all the time, and I am glad to be going to a club that's going to be a contender every year.
Well, you make it spoiled getting winning on winning teams with Pittsburgh. Congratulations and good luck in the NFL.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, that's Mark Benning, the second-round choice of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And coming in, it was said that they needed some help at tackle. I'll tell you, their offense is a good machine. I watched that Miami game down in the Orange Bowl last year, and they did nothing wrong offensively, really. They just couldn't keep up on defense with Marino. So he gets plugged in. If he gets to work in nicely, he goes into, as he said, he gets spoiled on a winning team, and he goes to one of those squads, Mel. You think it's a good pick for the Steelers?
I think it is. I think they were considering him in the first round. And, of course, you know, when Sims was there, they opted for him, gambled that Benning would still be there in the second round. He was. Zim made a point that they like those short squat linemen, those good drive blockers, and they did get the 3 Super Bowls with John Cole, the 6'2" tackle. But I thought this year Noel had to deviate from that old norm and go for a 6'6", 280-pound lineman, and he did for Benning. And Hal Hunter, their offensive line coach, had Benning rated ahead of Ken Rutgers, the offensive tackle from USC. So you know he was high on their list, probably rated in the first 28 selections.
So the Steelers have made a selection on either side of the line of scrimmage today, both of them on the line. Mark Benning of Nebraska, the second-round pick, and in the first round, Wisconsin's Darrell Sims, the defensive tackle. It's been a good day for Wisconsin. This is the second year of our draft coverage in which the entire draft is taking place all in one day. All the rounds will be wrapping up well after midnight Eastern Daylight Time. And even when you get down near the end in rounds 10, 11, and 12, many of which may have been involved in prior trades, there still is more than a latent importance in all these. Steve Sable has a look back at you can come away with some good players, even in the latter rounds, especially in the latter rounds sometimes.
One of the fascinating aspects...
ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the 1985 National Football League Collegiate Player Draft continues. We're sitting on
Chicago
the
has
Chicago
1 minute
Bears
remaining
selection.
on its selection.
We are now under 1 minute in the Chicago Bears selection, the 21st pick here in the second round. And the indication is that they have been going back and forth with someone, possibly the Miami Dolphins, talking about a possible trade. So we're sitting and waiting. And as you can see, as the clock winds down, we are now under the 42nd mark for the Chicago Bears. And the way their first selection went today, anything could happen in this, their second selection, gentlemen. They, of course, did take William Perry, the defensive tackle for Clemson, the first time around. It looked a short while ago as if they had signed their card and were ready to go, and then they took a step back and were riding down, and it doesn't look like they're going to get this. There it is. Here's your pick.
Chicago has made its selection.
Rusty will bring it up.
Tight end.
The Chicago choice is Reggie Phillips, defensive back, Southern Methodist. Reggie Phillips, defensive back, Southern Methodist. Los Angeles Rams have the next selection.
The Rams are up next, the 5th defensive back here in the second round, and all told the 8th defensive back in total selected. This is a defensive back from Southern Methodist, Reggie Phillips. Next is the Los Angeles Rams up next after their first selection of Jerry Gray, the defensive back of Texas. Where do you think the Rams will go, Paul?
Well, I still think the Rams are looking for a linebacker. I really do. You know, now SC is so close to L.A., and we're looking at an inside linebacker. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jack Del Rio go here, or some middle linebacker, some other middle linebacker, inside linebacker.
There, of course, is the John Robinson connection as well with the Rams to USC.
Did you hear Paul screaming when they said Chicago? You didn't hear him because his thing was. I got to tell him because I gave him credit for the quarterback. He says, hey, tight end. That's another tight end. It's a defensive back.
Buddy Ryan wanted the DB. Mike wanted the tight end. I guess they figure they can wait around.
Okay.
They can wait till the next round.
How about the Rams, Jim?
John Robinson talked about a pass rusher. He loved Freddie Joe Nunn. He loved Garen Veras. These are all guys he had figured for the first round, possibly. So they go safety man. Maybe he can go for the pass rusher now. Maybe he can try and get one lower down. I don't know. I don't know what kind of defensive ends are around that they like.
All right, we're waiting on the Los Angeles Rams, the 22nd selection in this, the second round of the National Football League draft. Then the St. Louis Cardinals. Then, remember, the Patriots still have 2 more selections in this round. We'll be back with more after this.
Walter, we're here at the world champion San Francisco 49er headquarters, but the news is about 500 miles south of here in Anaheim as the LA Rams are preparing a second-round pick. Of course, the first round, they picked Jerry Gray, a safety, and it's no secret, you know, Youngblood, we don't think can play past 65, so they need a pass
Maybe
rusher.
66, you know, he can make it. They do need a pass rusher. There's not a whole lot left right now. The interesting thing, of course, is that the Rams had been entertaining some ideas of possibly trading for a veteran defensive lineman, perhaps, and maybe trading that first-round pick because they didn't think that there'd be a tremendous enough pass rusher there in terms of the economics of it. Now they're sitting there with that second-round pick. They're also trying to trade Vince Ferragamo. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams made some kind of deal here. It's been a really active day in terms of trades. I think there's been 6 made already just on draft day. And by the end of this round, even if there's no other trades made in this round, out of the 56 picks in the first 2 rounds, they will have changed hands 23 times. So there's been a lot of trades, and it wouldn't surprise me to see the Rams maybe making a deal.
Well, it is very interesting, and when you get into the third round, you say, okay, is there really a lot of talent? All you have to do is look at the San Francisco 49er team. Guy by the name of Joe Montana, not bad quarterback. Carlton Williamson, Blanchard Montgomery, and
Dwight
Guy
Clark.
Montgomery.
And Dwight Clark,
Yep.
a 10th round pick. I think that's the thing about the draft, and certainly Bob Lee pointed it out early. In all the media uproar and all the hype leading up to the draft, everything is the first round, and everyone predicts what's going to happen in the first round. But the bottom line is the draft is 12 rounds long. Free agents, guys like Everson Walls make it with the Cowboys. So it's a team's overall scouting program that really comes into play on this day. And you have to do it with more than just your first round pick. All the picks are important, and all you have to do is look at the Pro Bowl each year and see how many late round picks and free agents, guys who weren't even drafted, are in the Pro Bowl. And a lot of times it's those players who come in and maybe work a little harder because they didn't have that college reputation, who come in and turn out to be pretty good pro football players.
Needless to say, Bill Walsh and John McVay have done quite a job right here in San Francisco. Now let's go back to Bristol and Bob Lee.
Well, thank you very much. Greg will be checking back in at the World Champion headquarters in Redwood City. The Rams, then St. Louis, if you've just joined us. Originally Washington's pick, then Atlanta's, now the Cardinals, and then New England. New England still with 2 more selections in the balance of the second round. They will close out the drafting in the second round by virtue of an earlier trade today with San Francisco. Earlier in the second round, the Bengals, who I guess on paper, when you looked at their needs, linebacker was certainly up there, and they went for Carl Zander, the inside linebacker out of Tennessee. Chris?
Okay, and we have Bob with us on the phone right now, Carl Zander from down in Tennessee. Congratulations on your choice with the Bengals. I got to ask you, did you and your teammate Alvin Tolles have a little side bet to see who went first, or are you just both glad to go very high in the draft?
We're both, I'm speaking for both of us. I think we're both glad to go very high. I had anticipated Alvin going a couple picks before me anyway.
Well, you are now going with the Cincinnati Bengals. What did Sam Weiss say to you, or Paul Brown, or whoever got on the phone? What did they have to say? Hey, we can really use you, and we're going places with this team?
Yeah, they were very excited about getting me, and I was very excited about going into play there. I'm just looking forward to hitting minicamp and getting started on it.
Well, they are a team that you know had a very good second half, a team that really can make the move on Pittsburgh. And I guess it's not so far away from where you are at school. How do you think that you can help them the most, Carl?
Hopefully I can come in and contribute a little bit this year, and then they have some older people in there, and hopefully work my way in.
Well, I guess there's some older folks you can learn from, but they're expecting big things from you. And, of course, Alvin Tolles, your teammate we were talking about, went to New Orleans, and you went to Cincinnati, so best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for talking with us. That's Carl Zander, second-round pick of the Bengals. You know, we were talking about the Bears. You think they really reached, and, of course, on the last year we were raving about their draft, Mel. This year they go with Perry. And I thought we jotted down, since Perry is the biggest guy in the draft, they should have picked Willie Drury, 5'8", 161 from West Virginia, wide receiver, the smallest guy in the draft in the second round. You think, though, this has been a real question mark for them?
I thought Perry was one of the top reaches in the first round. I thought that Reggie Phillips, who really didn't play that well at SMU, he has great speed, and he ran really a great time down at the Arizona State at the Combine workout in the 4.45 range, which really moved him up. But on the football field, he's not that good a player. I mean, he doesn't have real good instincts. He's not very big, and he's not very tough. I thought he was about a 7th or 9th rounder, maybe even a 10th rounder. And to go in the second round ahead of players like John Hendy, fine player from Long Beach State, Darrell Smith, a good player from Northern Alabama, smaller school, David Glasgow, Donnie Elder, who played opposite Burroughs. We talked about him earlier at Memphis State. Tyrone Davis, highly rated player at Clemson. I think he's overrated personally, but he was on the board. Sean Thomas, David King. There was about 15 to 17 cornerbacks that were rated higher than Reggie Phillips.
Just off the top of your head again. So you're saying the Bears may be playing some hunches, Bob. They're going out on a limb here.
Well, they also did that last year. If the situation with the other league gets to the point where you're going to want your supplemental draft rights from last year, Chicago has none there. They have 2 question marks here in the first 2 rounds of this year. So, yeah, maybe a bit of a gamble for the Bears. We're waiting for the Rams. There are 5.5 minutes for the Rams to make their selection in the second round, to be followed by the Cardinals. We'll be getting back to New York City and George Grant right after this word.
Hi, I'm Jack Lambert. I'll tell you how to look like a pro with NFL Pro Line. Let's start with the McGregor Sandknit jersey. You can order any NFL team jersey with the name and number you want.
On deck with approximately 3 minutes and to go with that selection. And let's get to New York and get that pick.
Scott Burgo,
Los Angeles Rams select Chuck Scott, wide receiver, Vanderbilt. Chuck Scott, wide receiver, Vanderbilt. St. Louis is now on the clock on its selection from Washington through Atlanta. St. Louis has the next choice.
As I was saying before, the Rams jumped in with about 3 minutes to go. That was their second selection. Chuck Scott, the Vanderbilt wide receiver. The first selection today for the Rams was defensive back Jerry Gray out of Texas. Earlier today, Coach John Robinson, having made that selection, was able to reflect on what the addition of Gray will mean now to his defensive.
Well, I think we felt like we had a need in the secondary at corner. We have two good corners, and I think you can never have too many there. Some people see, obviously, Gray played safety man for Texas. They're a man-to-man club, so he's played a lot of man-type coverage. He has outstanding speed and athletic ability, and we feel he can play corner for us, and we felt he was the best player there.
He almost said best player available.
Nobody
it has
could
been
say
a
that.
bear market today in that phrase. It usually is a rather much of a bull market, but maybe because it's not a great draft this year, we haven't said it that quite so often. Chuck Scott, though, was selected. The wide receiver out of Vanderbilt, who moved to wide receiver this year after spending a great deal of time at tight end, so he's a rather stockily built 6'1", 200-pound customer. In fact, back last year, 1983, tied the Vanderbilt season record with some 70 receptions. And as often happens when, well, A, you move to a new position, and B, you've got a reputation in college, they key on you, so his senior season wasn't as great as his junior season.
He's a solid, productive player, Bob, and you look at what he did at Vanderbilt was really one of their top players overall, offensively and defensively. Catches the ball in traffic. He doesn't have the 4.4 speed, but he runs good routes. He'll catch the football. What the Rams really need was a consistent receiver. They have Otis Grant. They have Ron Brown. They have a lot of speed, but inconsistency. This guy will catch the football for him and be a receiver that Dieter Brock can go to when the game is on the line, and he'll come through with the catch.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned Dieter Brock because what we were waiting for all day today, and I must say are still waiting for, were all these trades. We thought the Ferragamo trade with Buffalo was virtually a lock. You know that with Dieter Brock, the Rams are going to deal Vince Ferragamo. You know that if they dealt him to Buffalo, that Ferguson might have gone, John Jefferson, Danny White. We had a lot of great names thrown around, but only Joe Washington is gone. And is it about the time that we also hear Herschel Walker, somebody taking a shot right here? But, Mel, I thought we'd have some trades. I'm a little disappointed now.
Well, I'll tell you, Chris, when you look at the trades, I thought that they would happen after the draft, when training camp rolls around. Teams start to panic a little bit. Talk about a Ferragamo. Well, maybe a team finds out that they're not set at quarterback, and they're willing to give up a high pick in next year's draft, which is a very strong year for running backs and quarterbacks. I look at it that way, and I see what you're saying about a possible trade for Ferragamo. It still may occur. You don't know. It might be a draft choice in next year's lottery. We'll also have to wait and see on that, but I agree. If Ferragamo did go, Ferguson would be the next one out, too.
Also, the Rams have gone defensive back, and then they followed that up with a wide receiver pick, Chuck Scott out of Vanderbilt. Again, at the Combine, this young man with 4.57 speed, we asked him what kind of strengths he can bring now. He'll be drafted by the Rams here in the second round.
I think my biggest strength is catching the ball over in the middle or in a crowd, and I don't have the greatest speed to go deep like some of the guys do, but I'm pretty steady in catching the ball, and I like catching in the crowd and got pretty good concentration. I guess that'd be my biggest strength.
So the thoughts of Scott, who will now be moving on to the Rams, and we'll see whether indeed a USFL name pops up. When the quarterback dam burst, it was a slight breach in the burst, but Randall Cunningham and then Darren Gilbert went quickly back early in the second round. Cunningham to Philly, then New Orleans, selecting Darren Gilbert. So maybe everyone is waiting each other out as far as making a move for someone from the other league. George?
Thanks, Bob. And you fellows were talking about Warren Moon, the whole Los Angeles situation, and Dieter Brock. It's going to be interesting when we get to the exhibition season on August the 10th. The Los Angeles Rams are going to play Houston. It's going to be the CFL Battle of the Quarterbacks, the transplants. Warren Moon going for Houston, Dieter Brock going for Los Angeles. Brock, of course, the 7th quarterback that the Rams have had since 1980, the 7th starting quarterback. So, yeah, I think we're probably going to see something in the next, if not today, then in the next few weeks, something with Ferragamo. Standing by on the main floor of the 1985 Collegiate Player Draft is Sam Rosen. Sam?
Thank you, George. And with me is Steve Serby, longtime beat writer for the New York Jets, for the New York Post, covering the New York Jets, and now football columnist. And Steve, looking at the Jets picks, Al Toon's got to be a big, big boost for them.
Oh, he's just what the doctor ordered. 6'4", 200 pounds, possibly another James Lofton or Mike Quick. The Jets will settle for either one. A guy who can stay healthy, and that's something the Jets have been lacking at wide receiver. Maybe they'll trade Wesley Walker now. I know that's what some of the draftniks seem to want, but good pick. Second round, the Jets picked a 215-pound safety. Strong safety, probably moving in for Kirk Springs, I would imagine.
bringing in a guy like Toon, let's go back to Toon for a moment. What does that do for a quarterback like Ken O'Brien?
Ken O'Brien, with all due respect to Ken, needs all the help he can get. And Toon's a guy who can catch the ball in a crowd and go over the middle, and he's 6'4" and he can leap, and he's got great hands. And I'm sure Mike Hickey was doing high fives in the war room when Toon was still there.
Let's assess some of the other teams. How about the Buffalo Bills, who've had 4 picks in the first 2 rounds? They seem to have helped themselves a great deal. First, we want to have our next pick. Let's go back up to the podium.
St. Louis selects Scott Burgold, tackle, Wisconsin. Scott Burgold, tackle, Wisconsin. New England, on a choice from the Los Angeles Raiders, has the next selection.
It's been a big day for Wisconsin grads.
Yeah, 3 guys in the first round. How come their teams are so lousy? Hate to see the other 19 guys that play.
Let's go back to the AFC now. As far as the Buffalo Bills are concerned, 4 picks, first 2 rounds. They look to have helped themselves a great deal.
Yeah, and well, they've got a lot of holes to fill. They need about 11 picks in the first 2 rounds. But Trainowitz, the center tackle, and who's the other guy they picked?
Burkett, the wide receiver.
The wide receiver. They need help there. First round, of course, they picked. Who did they pick?
You remember Bruce Smith. You forgot all your picks.
I was having lunch. I was Bruce Smith, of course, the Alton Trophy winner. Buffalo, the 2nd worst pass rush in the league last year. And who was their other first round
pick? They also drafted a defensive back in the first round, and that was Derek Burrows.
Yeah, we're playing dumb. I hope everybody knows that. Derek Burrows considered the 2nd best cornerback in the draft, and Buffalo needs help in a lot of areas. I thought they might have gone for Ethan Horton, but what do I know, as the general public is finding out? Did I overdress, by the way?
You look great. You look like you're ready to play some football yourself. Thanks for being with us, Steve Serby. New England is up with their next pick.
Thank you very much, Sam. We have just had Scott Burgold, the defensive tackle from Wisconsin, selected. Let's go to Joe Ryan.
New England Patriots, on a choice from the Los Angeles Raiders, select Jim Bowman, defensive back, Central Michigan. Jim Bowman, defensive back, Central Michigan. Seattle is on the clock.
Yes, their initial selection, and then Denver, and then San Diego. Actually, 4 more selections, and then New England will close out officially the 2nd round with the pick that originally belonged to San Francisco until earlier today. The Raiders, well, they always march to their own drummer, and today, by listening to that snare drum, they snared themselves Jesse Hester, the wide receiver from Florida State University in Tallahassee. We had a chance to talk with Tom Flores, the head coach of the Raiders, about picking up Hester out of FSU today in round number 1 of the draft.
Yeah, it's been a long time since the Raiders took a wide receiver in the first round. We were surprised that he was still there. We had rated him very highly. We think he's our type of receiver with the speed and the quickness, the home run abilities. He's just, we're very excited about it.
Very fast and very opportunistic. That seems to be the book on Jesse Hester, the first-round selection, wide receiver of the Raiders out of Florida State. And let's now backtrack a couple of picks and go back and show you St. Louis's selection in the 2nd round, which was defensive end, defensive tackle, Scott Burgold out of Wisconsin. Go get him, Badgers. Yet another selection for the guys from Madison. Another guy, Mel, and we talked about the ability to improve. He has done this, and maybe he's got to put a little weight on, but he's gotten better and better and better.
I'll tell you, his growth potential is tremendous, Bob. And you look at him, he was probably the most underrated player in the Wisconsin defense. You know, Darrell Simmons got all the publicity. Melker got a lot of it. Of course, Richard Johnson did too. Burgold was one of their steadiest players. Good pass rush potential. He's got the frame to carry at least 20 more pounds. Heck of a player, very intense. And that's the thing you like about him. Plays every down like it would decide the national championship, and that's what you like to see.
Yet another defensive lineman, Chris. No secrets here. That has been the strength of the draft.
Well, beforehand, Bob, we were talking about teams looking for those quantum leap pass rushers, whether at linebacker or at defensive end, and that seems to be the case. They weren't blowing smoke.
Okay, Seattle, your team is about to make a pick, and let's pick it up now in New York City.
Kelly of Notre Dame has not been picked yet. Some people predict him.
As we await the official word that'll be handed down, this is pick number 25 of the 2nd round and the 53rd pick overall, and we were led to believe that the card might be on the way from the table. And well, this is going to be Seattle's first pick so far of the draft. They'll be followed by
everybody
Denver.
has joined in then, right, Bob?
Yeah, I would everyone's waiting. And the envelope, please. I think there might be a holdup. Maybe just, I hope the phones are connected to it.
Telephone representative to the Tampa Bay table, please. Seattle has made its selection. Gill Owen. Owen Gill. Owen Gill, excuse me. Running back, Iowa. Owen Gill, running back, Iowa.
So Seattle with their first
Denver has
selection.
the next selection.
Going for running back Owen Gill. That's right, Owen Gill, the running back from Iowa. I was about to say two of the, because of the telephone hookups today, two teams are using each other's telephones. So much for divestiture. Nonetheless, with Denver, San Diego, and New England to finish out this round. Let's jump back once again, if we can, to talk about New England's selection. The middle of the three selections they have to close out the second round with Jim Bowman, who at Central Michigan, one of the best ever they've ever had back there in the secondary.
I'll tell you, they were looking for a hitter, Bob. They got two players in the secondary, Rick Sanford and of course, Roland James, neither of which had very good years last year, neither of which showed the aggressiveness that Steinberg and the coaching staff were looking for. And Bowman, a small college player, big kid, you know, looks like a linebacker when you watch him on film, the way he hits. Not as good in coverage. You sacrifice a little coverage with him, but he's a hitter, and I think that's what they needed. An intimidator who will make those wide receivers shy away from coming across that middle.
And the Broncos are ready to unveil their other second-round pick in this draft. Let's get back to New York City. Already they've gone for Steve Sewell and Van Johnson. Sewell in the first round, the wide receiver and also running back out of Oklahoma, and Vance Johnson in the second round already, the wide receiver out of Arizona.
You know, back to Gill while we wait for the Broncos, see if they go defense this time. A fullback, not a bad move, really, for Seattle. Warner coming back, they say he will be 100%. But Owen Gill, you know, Warner went down. They just really didn't have anyone at a fullback type position. They've got some other guys that can carry the football, Hughes, etc. But this is not unexpected to see Seattle go that way. Knox told me that he was looking for a pass rusher, which is why obviously he drafted a fullback.
Well, he needs depth at that position. You know, Kurt Warner, you mentioned. The thing about Gill is he can play halfback or fullback, gives you that versatility, blocks well, has ran out of the tailback slot. Here you see him taking the pitch, going wide, cutting it up the field. You know, he's a good all-around back, catches the ball, blocks, does everything. He's not outstanding, but he's adequate, and I think he'll help out for a team like Seattle, who doesn't want to be in a position where they're in dire straits if something happens to Warner or one of their fullbacks.
That's right, and Seattle, of course, a team that you plug Warner back into them, and maybe they could have gotten into the Super Bowl last year, even as well as Miami played. They had an excellent year, and their franchise back was out. Now, how does Owen Gill fit in to the running backs? Well, this is what we're talking about. But they have some ball players with Seattle for sure. Dornick isn't going to lose any games, and David Hughes, Eric Lane, Randall Morris, and of course Warner. You know about him. Injury questions. They certainly hope he's 100%. Remember, they had Franco Harris in there last year. That whole experiment did not work. So Owen Gill, certainly it makes sense for the Seahawks, and now everybody has made a selection, Bob.
Let's get to New York very quickly.
Position number 4 should read Minnesota from Atlanta. Position 19 should read San Francisco from New England. And position 28 should read New England from San Francisco.
What they are just doing, clarifying the draft positions in the third round. And again, the changes that have been made, Minnesota will pick 4th in the third round, also within the third. And these are only the changes that have happened from the original draft order since today began, since the draft got underway. Buffalo picks in the 7th position, and also New England will pick in the 28th position. San Francisco goes in the 19th. For those draftniks who are home, following us pick by pick, we're awaiting the Broncos pick, and then San Diego, that's the pick they own, in the trade for Pete Johnson with the Dolphins back last September. Then New England will close out the second round, and a draft that really has lived up primarily to the billings that we expected. It has been a draft of trenchmen, it has been a draft of the precious few marquee names, and a draft where we are still waiting for the first shoe to drop from the USFL. But Owen Gill was just drafted by Seattle, a running back out of Iowa, and we said he's workmanlike, maybe not flashy, but he feels that the Hawkeyes, as he told us, really have given him some tools now to prepare him for his life in the NFL.
I think helping me become a better pass receiver. My first year, I couldn't catch the ball at all, and after a little while, you know, we started putting in more routes for the running backs, and that helped me a great deal coming out the backfield and catching the football. And I think that's going to help me in the long run.
Owen Gill out of Iowa, the only selection Seattle has made so far. It came in the number 53 slot overall, the 25th selection in the second round. So we are going to see what happens with the Broncos. We'll step aside for a moment, then get back to New York City. And again, New York City, I think, is set with Denver's pick. So before we step aside, let's see what the Broncos are doing.
We'll check this guy. Whenever you're ready. Denver's selection, Simon Fletcher, defensive line, Houston. Simon Fletcher, defensive line, Houston. San Diego, on a choice from Miami, is up.
So Denver has made their selection, defensive lineman Simon Fletcher, University of Houston, to go with two offensive players, Vance Johnson and Steve Sewell. The Broncos have already taken today. And in just a second, we'll be back now with two more selections to close out round two as we come down the home stretch, the last several hours of our coverage, our 6th consecutive year of the National Football League Draft, live on ESPN.